Welcome to Elementary Astrology. My name is Roderick Holloway, and I'll be your instructor for the entire length of this tutorial. In case you don't know what astrology is, it is the study of planetary movements within our solar system and how they influence human life on planet Earth. It is the oldest science and has been around for thousands of years. I've been a practicing astrologer for over 40 years now. I was introduced to it around 1974 when I read Linda Goodman's Sun Signs book, and I've been hooked ever since. My goals for this tutorial are 1. To make learning astrology fun and, although complex, as simple as possible to learn. 2. To make it informative. 3. And more importantly, to provide you with a basic understanding of astrology so that you can expand your knowledge of it in the future if you choose to do so. I've divided this tutorial into 6 chapters so that the information I'm presenting won't overwhelm you, and I encourage you to take your time to think about each one before moving on to the next. You will find that learning astrology and applying it to your life is indeed a lifelong journey of understanding and, for some people, acceptance. Before I get started, I would like to make this point. This tutorial is designed to teach you about natal or birth astrology, which is the basis for all other forms of astrology. Some of the other forms, like horary, event, transits, and progressions, I will not be covering. I do believe, however, that the material I will be covering should be enough of a challenge for you to learn for now. Now that I've prepared you for this adventure, assuming of course that you accept it, let's get started. As I said in my introduction, I've divided this tutorial into chapters, and there are 6 to be exact. I will take you through each one until they're all complete. If you find you need time to digest the information contained in a chapter, then play it back until you feel comfortable with moving on to the next. In Chapter 1, I will talk about planet Earth, our solar system, and the outlying star constellations commonly referred to as the zodiac. Chapter 2 is all about what it means to be a human being on planet Earth from birth to maturity to death. I will talk about the human life cycle and how it works in astrology. In Chapter 3, I will introduce you to the main tool of an astrologer, and that is a horoscope. I will simplistically take you through the basics of manually constructing versus using a computer to construct a natal horoscope, or chart as some people call it. I will also talk about the tools required and the decisions that have to be made before one can be constructed. In Chapter 4, we will take the deep dive into the fundamentals of understanding and analyzing a natal chart. This is where the rubber meets the road and where we will spend the bulk of our time. Chapter 5 is where I will tie it all together by talking about basic horoscope analysis procedures and end by doing a sample reading of my own horoscope so that you can see how it's done. I will, however, keep it brief. Lastly, I'll conclude this tutorial by talking briefly about other forms of astrology, and I will provide you with a list of important reference books that I recommend that you buy and study to increase your knowledge. Now let's move on to Chapter 1. In this chapter, I will be covering these 3 areas of importance: planet Earth, the solar system we live in, and the zodiac or star constellations that surround our solar system like a belt. The reason I'm starting with these 3 areas is because they make up the entire horoscope that I will be talking about in Chapter 4, and I can't emphasize the importance of truly understanding them enough. Planet Earth is one of 9 planets in our Sun's solar system, and is composed of approximately 70% water and 30% dry land. Over 1 billion years ago, heat from the sun in contact with planet Earth's surface created air and water. This combination of elements produced the biosphere, in which we now live. It is important for you to understand this concept because without fire, air, earth, and water, life as we know it cannot exist. As I continue through this tutorial, you will hear me refer to these elements quite often. They are an integral part of astrology. That is why I'm talking about them up front. Another concept that I want you to understand is how our 4 seasons are formed and how the flow of their energy affects life on planet Earth. When planet Earth makes its yearly orbit around the Sun, it goes through a tilting action that moves its northern hemisphere toward and away from the Sun. This tilting action, or another way to put it, wobble, creates 4 seasons, that is spring, summer, fall, and winter. In addition to creating the 4 seasons, planet Earth's orbit also lengthens and shortens daylight and nighttime hours over the course of a year. Beginning on approximately December 23rd, daylight hours increase in length from 8 hours of daylight and 16 hours of night to a maximum of 16 hours of daylight and 8 hours of night around June 19th. From there, daylight hours begin to decrease and nighttime hours increase until they get back to 8 hours of daylight and 16 hours of nighttime on December 23rd again. A simple way of understanding these phenomena is to think of our planet as being a giant light bulb with a dimmer switch attached to it. When you gradually turn the dimmer switch up, the light energy increases, and when you gradually turn it down, the light energy decreases. Planet Earth's atmosphere works the same way, and as you will see in the next chapter, this consistent energy flow plays a big role in how life works on planet Earth. Planet Earth also has one moon that orbits around it in 8 phases. They are called new moon, crescent moon, first quarter moon, waxing gibbous, full moon, disseminating gibbous, third quarter, and balsamic moon. These phases are a result of how the moon interacts with the sun. The moon really has no light of its own. It only reflects light or energy from the sun. The strength of this reflected light is evidenced in the 8 phases, with the full moon being the strongest reflected light. Like the sun, the moon plays an extremely important role in the behavior of life on planet Earth. It has an enormous impact on the flow of ocean tides, and in the next chapter I will talk about its effect on human life. Lastly, planet Earth is the only planet in our solar system that can support intelligent life, and this is where we as human beings happen to live. Therefore, from now on, when I talk about planet Earth, I want you to think about it as the center of our solar system and not the sun being the center. In other words, everything in astrology revolves around planet Earth, and isn't that special? Our solar system is part of the Milky Way galaxy, which has millions of solar systems. Our solar system, with planet Earth at the center, has 10 known planets. In astrology, the sun and the moon are considered planets, but because of their level of importance, they're weighted more heavily in horoscope reading. The other 8 planets, in order of distance from the Earth, are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. In Chapter 4, I will be discussing in detail the role of these planets in astrology and horoscope reading. On this slide, next to each planet, I've placed their astrological symbol for you to memorize. These symbols are used exclusively in analyzing and reading horoscopes. In addition, I've placed next to each planet the amount of time it takes it to orbit the Earth. Memorize these times as well. I will use some of these orbit times in my discussion about life cycles, and they are also useful in more advanced forms of astrology. So it's a good idea for you to know them now. Now that you know a little more about planet Earth and the planets that orbit around it, it's time to tackle the zodiac, or star constellations that surround our solar system like a belt. On a clear night, if you look to the sky, you will see many stars. Within these stars, if you know how to find them, you will see what appear to be clusters of stars that look like animals. These clusters make up the 12 signs of the zodiac. Astrologers today and in ancient times used the zodiac to map the movements of the planets in our solar system. The signs of the zodiac on this slide are in order as follows: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Each of these signs has a fixed coordinate of 30 degrees, thus making up a 360-degree circle around the Earth. Each sign begins and ends at approximately the same time during a calendar year. Aries is from March 20th through April 20th. Taurus is from April 20th through May 20th. Gemini is May 20th through June 20th. Cancer is June 20th through July 20th, and so on and so forth. I placed the zodiac symbols and their respective dates on this slide for you to memorize. As with the planetary symbols, you will be using them in all your astrological studies, so learn them well. A simple way, I find, of thinking about zodiac signs is to compare them to the months and seasons of a calendar year. For example, think Aries springtime in April, Taurus middle of spring in May, Gemini end of spring in June, etc., etc. Hopefully, this method of memorizing zodiac symbols will help you to know what they mean when you see them. Like with the planets, I will be covering them in more detail in Chapter 4. In the last chapter, I covered planet Earth, our solar system, and zodiac. In this chapter, my focus will be on what it means to be a human being living on Earth. I will talk about the birth process and the importance of a baby's first breath in astrology. I will finish up with a discussion about the human life cycle and planet Saturn's role in it. Human beings dominate life on planet Earth. And yes, I had to say it. But the question is why, when other life forms can see, hear, and swim better than us, and even fly when we cannot? The answer, I believe, lies in the fact that we have a highly evolved intellect that we can use to change our environment if need be, and we have the all-important free will to do so at any given time. From an astrology standpoint, we are composed of three major components. 1, an individualized physical body, meaning all humans are physically different down to our fingerprints. 2, a conscious mind that controls our 5 senses, that is hearing, sight, taste, touch, and smell. 3, a subconscious mind that governs our feelings and answers to the call of our conscious mind. It is important that you understand these things because when I teach you horoscope analysis, you will be using this information all the time. Before I move on, I'd like to point out one other important item. As human beings, we are primarily a land-based animal with a body that is made up of approximately 70% water and 30% solid matter or earth. I know you've heard these numbers before, and I believe it was in the last chapter when I said that planet Earth is made up of 70% water and 30% earth. This similarity of structure between planet Earth and human beings is not by coincidence. As you dig deeper into astrology, you will find that one of the keys to understanding it is to come to the realization that if the planetary movements in our solar system can affect planet Earth in favorable or unfavorable ways, then all of life on Earth can be affected in the same way as well. There is an old famous saying in astrology that I will impart to you now, and that is, as above, so below. Some examples of this are, if the sun shines bright enough, you will put on sunglasses. When the moon is full, water in your body increases and your feelings will be affected. If enough planets align themselves negatively, an earthquake could happen both on Earth and within you as well. These are only a few of the things that planetary movements can affect. And with that, let's move on to the next subject. Any discussion about astrology and its influence on life would not be complete without a discussion about birth. I will now talk about how I see the birthing process by using my deep ocean analogy. To me, a fetus in a mother's womb is like a diver working under enormous energy pressure deep in the ocean. After finishing his work, he gradually ascends to the surface to avoid the dreaded bend. Likewise, a fetus under a mother's energy pressure works to develop and grow into a baby, and when finished, it ascends gradually to the surface to be born. This parallel is not lost with astrology. In this analogy, the energy pressure on a diver deep in the ocean, although different, is like a mother's energy pressure on her baby. The question to be answered, however, is what type of energy pressure does the mother have? In my opinion, a mother's energy is the same energy that she inhaled during her first breath experience. Put simply, if a mother's sign is Taurus, then it's Taurus energy. If it is Leo, then it's Leo energy, and so on and so forth. The reason I'm sharing this information with you is to say that babies have a built-in intelligence that tries to bring them into this world compatible astrologically with their parents. For example, my mother was a Taurus and my father was a Gemini. And although I'm an Aries, I was born with a Gemini rising sign and a Taurus moon. My brother was born with a Taurus rising sign, thus making our family Taurus in nature. You will find as you continue your study of astrology that many families are connected astrologically, but they're not aware of it. When a baby emerges from his mother's womb and successfully takes its first breath, 4 things happen. 1, it allows the baby to live by means of its own solar system energy. 2, in the form of energy, it maps inside the baby like a fingerprint the exact planetary positions in our solar system, including the zodiac sign. 3, it sets the baby on a life cycle path from infant to maturity to death. And 4, it sets the birth time for an astrologer to erect a natal horoscope for analysis and counsel with the parents. The rationale for the importance of a baby's first breath is this. In the chapter on planet Earth, I explained how the Earth's energy consistently changes throughout the year like a giant light bulb with a dimmer switch attached. In fact, even over the course of a day, there are energy strength changes. When a baby takes its first breath in December, when there is more nighttime, it is inhaling weaker energy. When it does so in June, when there is more daylight, it is inhaling stronger energy. Therefore, this random inhaling of energy throughout the year by babies taking their first breath makes them all behave differently in some way. Astrology unlocks the secrets of a baby's first breath. Next, I will talk about the human life cycle and planet Saturn's involvement. Once a baby is born and takes its first breath, its life cycle begins. An astrologer can track this life cycle in a number of ways once he or she constructs the baby's horoscope. One of the ways is to use the sun's placement in the chart. When I had you memorize in Chapter 1 the planet symbols and orbit times, I did that for this lesson. I hope you followed through. The Sun takes 1 year to orbit the Earth and return to the exact time and place in the solar system when the baby was born. On that day and in each subsequent year, everyone who cares celebrates the baby's birthday, or in astrology, it is called Sun's Return. Over the course of a baby's life cycle, that day will be used to tell the person's age, when to enroll in school, when to drive a car, etc., etc. As you've guessed by now, every human being knows this way of tracking a person's life cycle and the events that might occur during that life cycle, with or without knowing anything about astrology. I guess you could say that we are all born astrologers. It's just that most people don't know it yet. Now that I've explained to you what it means to use the sun to track a person's life cycle, let me share with you my thoughts on why I believe planet Saturn should be used as well. Unlike the sun's 1 year return, Saturn takes 29 years to orbit the Earth and return to its time and place at birth. Over the course of its orbit, I have found that this planet has more of an effect on a person's life cycle and the events that happen than any other planet's return, including the sun's. I'll tell you why. Saturn, since the beginning of astrology, has been called the Great Malefic or Bad News Planet. An astrologer will always look to see where it's placed in a person's horoscope because it indicates where in life a person might have restrictions, delays, and other unfortunate issues to deal with. It's been my experience that although Saturn is indeed a negative force to be reckoned with, I have found that its primary role in a person's life cycle is to identify areas of weakness and prompt a person to be more responsible about fixing them. Having said that, I will now talk about the timing events Saturn brings to a person's life cycle. Saturn, approximately every 7 years from the time a baby is born, signals through life-altering events when a person needs to move to the next level or stage in life. Between the ages 6 through 8, children have events that occur that will move them from being very literal about life to being more rational and logical. For example, a child is told at an early age that their gifts come from the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, etc., etc. One day a friend or relative tells him or her that there is no Easter Bunny or Santa Claus. He or she rushes home crying to ask their parents about it, and the parents confirm the truth. To most children, this news can be devastating. However, there is a silver lining. After the child knows the truth, a curious thing happens. The child now feels compelled to question everything he or she is told until they logically and rationally understand why. This example shows the negative and positive results of this Saturn timing event. Keeping with the 7-year cycle, the next Saturn timing event happens between ages 13 through 15. At this stage in a teenager's life, the Saturn event might be a parent not allowing their teenager to sleep over at a friend's house. The teenager begins to rebel against family rules because friends are now more important than family. At ages 20 through 22, young adults want their own place to live instead of being tied to their parents' home. The Saturn event involved might be the young person going to college, getting kicked out of their parents' home, etc., etc. Age 28 through 30 can be the most difficult Saturn timing event for a person to deal with. It is the time that Saturn returns to its exact place and time of birth in a person's chart. It is Saturn's birthday, so to speak. At this age, a person will be forced to move from being a young adult to a full-fledged responsible adult. Saturn return events at this stage in life can be quite profound, and that is why I advise people to prepare themselves, both mentally and physically, in advance of any Saturn return. Now that I've given you a feel for the positive and negative aspects of Saturn timing events, I will only mention two more that are of major significance. The first is ages 41 through 43, which is midlife crisis, and for most people, this can be a major life-changing experience, especially because both Saturn and Uranus, the planet ruling sudden events, are involved. The second is ages 58 through 60, and is Saturn's second return or second birthday. This will be just as life-altering as the first one that happened at age 29. This concludes Chapter 2 in my discussion of life cycles and planet Saturn's involvement. I encourage you to review your own life cycle timeline to see if these times match up with yours. The events probably won't be the same, but the timeline should be the same. Over the last 2 chapters, I've spent a lot of time preparing you for the next 3 chapters on constructing a natal horoscope, horoscope fundamentals, and basic horoscope analysis. Before I get started, though, I want to encourage you to review the first 2 chapters again, because I want to make sure you completely understand them before moving on with the rest of this tutorial. If need be, please be proactive and find information online and read books of your own choosing about these subjects to get a better understanding of them. My intent over the next 3 chapters is to provide you with a starting point to get you pumped up to explore astrology on your own. Trust me, it will be worth it, and it will certainly change your life. Now that I've given you my rah-rah speech, let's jump into this chapter on constructing a natal horoscope. In Chapter 3, I will discuss the tools that are required and the decisions you'll have to make to create an accurate natal horoscope that works best for you. All natal horoscopes are not the same, as you will see. When I started constructing horoscopes some 40 years ago, I did them manually. That's right. I did the manual calculations and took paper and pencil in hand and wrote every symbol and degree into a paper chart. I even wrote out my analysis on paper. Do I miss it? Heck no. I love the computer age and the time it saves me. I can now focus more time on horoscope analysis and getting it right, as opposed to spending a lot of time constructing an accurate chart. The most important thing, though, about constructing a horoscope manually is that you will truly get to know every detail about constructing one. Whereas, if you construct a horoscope using a computer, you'll miss the fine points involved. I recommend that you create 1 or 2 manually, and then let the computer do it for you. Before you can construct a natal horoscope, the most important thing you'll need is a person's birthday, time of birth, and place of birth information. This can be found on a person's birth certificate and tells an astrologer when and where the person's first breath was taken. In case you're wondering why time and place of birth information is needed, I'll tell you why. All planetary positions in their zodiac signs are recorded daily at noon in Greenwich, England, which is 0 degrees longitude and divides the world into eastern and western halves. By knowing a person's time and place of birth, the planetary positions can be remapped from Greenwich, England, to wherever a person is born. This remapping of planetary positions gives an astrologer a truer picture of the circumstances under which a person is born. The first book you will definitely need for manually casting a horoscope is an ephemeris. The Rosicrucian Fellowship Organization publishes this book, and each book contains 10 years of daily planetary position data, that is 1950 to 1959, years 2000 to 2009, etc. You will use it to accurately place all 10 planets by zodiac sign and degree in the horoscope you're constructing. The second book you will need is a table of houses. The Rosicrucian organization also publishes this book. You will use it to accurately place zodiac signs by degree on all 12 houses of your chart. The third book you will need is an atlas that contains longitude and latitude data for North America or the world for that matter. You will use this book to find the longitude and latitude of a person's place of birth. This information is critical because you'll need it for making corrections between local mean time and sidereal birth time data. The fourth item you will need, and the second most important, is Llewellyn George's book entitled A to Z Horoscope Maker and Delineator. This book is my astrology Bible, and it explains in detail how to make a natal horoscope. I recommend you buy this book because I will not be covering the details of manual horoscope construction in this tutorial. Again, I do recommend that you spend time manually doing a few before using a computer. But in case you absolutely do not want to take the time to construct a horoscope manually, you can find websites online that will allow you to make them for free. In addition, I've been using Time Cycle's research horoscope making software for years. They make excellent products and they are extremely accurate. I've listed their website on this slide. The one caveat here, though, is that their programs are based on the Macintosh operating system. There are Windows-based software programs for astrology available, but I've never used them, so I can't recommend any. Whether you cast a horoscope manually or use a computer, there are two important decisions you'll have to make before you start. First, you'll have to decide which zodiac system you will use for making your horoscope. I've been using the tropical zodiac system for over 40 years. I find that it works well for me. It's the most commonly used zodiac system in the Western world, and I recommend it to beginners and pros as well. I've never used heliocentric or sidereal zodiac systems, so I can't help you there. However, once you learn how to cast a proper horoscope using tropical, you might want to experiment with the others to see how well you like them. The other major decision you'll have to make is regarding house systems. I use Placidus' house system exclusively, and I love it. There are approximately 13 other house systems that many people use, and I've listed a few on this slide, but the most popular in the Western world is Placidus. I recommend that you start with that and experiment with the others later. These two decisions, along with the tools I covered in the last slide, will be all you will need to construct an accurate horoscope. The only other thing you'll need, and the most important, is the will to do it. This concludes Chapter 3. Everything I taught you up to this point was designed to prepare you for this most important chapter on horoscope fundamentals. This is where the rubber meets the road, and in this chapter, Chapter 4, I will teach you how to read a horoscope. First, I'll show you a natal chart without planets and zodiac signs included. This will allow me to explain the basic framework of a chart. Second, I will add the 12 house meanings to the chart and explain them in detail. Third, I'll add the 10 planets and 12 zodiac signs to what I call a perfect horoscope and explain them in detail as well. Fourth, I will share with you the meanings of the zodiac. Fifth, I'll talk about planetary meanings. And lastly, I will talk about planetary relationships by way of their aspects and the important role they play in chart analysis. Let's take a look at a horoscope without planets and zodiac signs. Let me begin by saying that a horoscope, or you can call it a chart, is an actual picture of our solar system at the time any living being on Earth takes its first breath and begins its life cycle. At the center of any chart is planet Earth. To the left of the chart is the eastern horizon, and to the right is the western horizon. The top of the chart is the midhaven or high noon, and the bottom of the chart is the nadir or midnight. The line across the middle connecting the east to the west is the horizon line and separates daylight from nighttime. The 12 pie shapes that you see with lines jutting out from the Earth, are the 12 houses of the chart. And as you can see, they are numbered in order from 1 through 12 around the Earth. These houses represent departments of human life, with houses 1 through 6 called personal houses and 7 through 12 called social houses. I will explain them in more detail later on. The area surrounding the Earth that I've colored to look like daylight and nighttime is where the 10 planets of our solar system are placed. They rise in the east and set in the west, just like you see every day. The outer band surrounding the Earth is where the 12 signs of the zodiac are placed. They move from east to west as well. These components make up the basic framework of all horoscopes, no matter what zodiac or house system is used. From now on, anytime you look at a horoscope, I want you to imagine you're in outer space looking at the Earth from a distance, with planets and zodiac signs rising from the east towards daylight and setting towards night in the west. This is the basic framework of a natal horoscope, and it resides within all living beings on Earth. To recap the important components of a basic horoscope layout, they are as follows. Left side of the chart is east and the right side is west. All planets and zodiac signs rise in the east and set in the west. The midhaven is high noon and the nadir is midnight. Personal houses are 1 through 6 and are in the dark for only you to know. Social houses are 7 through 12 in daylight for all to see. Planets occupy the inner circle depicted as daylight and nighttime. Lastly, zodiac signs occupy the outer circle or band. The 12 houses of a horoscope represent departments of human life. In horoscope analysis, they show where things are happening to an individual. The first 6 houses that lie below the horizon are called personal houses. They pertain to activities that people know about themselves. The 6 houses above the horizon are called social houses because they pertain to activities that people do with others. When children are born and begin their life cycle, they must learn many things, both personal and social, in order to become productive members of society. This is where an understanding of the 12 houses comes into play. Each house is designed by nature in such a way that if a child masters its department of life, he or she will progressively grow to reach his or her full potential and become a productive and valued member of society. Let's now look at each house and the keys to mastering that house. The first house represents a person's physical body, identity, personality, or the facade they present to the world. To master this house, you must develop a strong identity and sense of self, but at the same time understand that every human being is as important as you are. You must maintain good personal grooming habits and present your best face to the public at all times. This is the I am house. The second house is the house of what's yours. It governs your finances and all things you own, including your self-worth. To master it, you must understand that everything you own, although extremely important, should be shared with others. The third house is the house of early education, your brothers and sisters, close relatives, and short journeys. It can be mastered by getting a good grade school through high school education, learning to love and appreciate your siblings and close relatives, and lastly, exploring and knowing the boundaries of your local community or neighborhood. The fourth house is the house of home. It governs your home life, parents, especially your mother, and how you like to relax. It is mastered through keeping your home orderly and clean, learning to appreciate, love, and respect your parents, and keeping your home life harmonious. The fifth house is the house of play. This house governs how you like to have fun. What do you do to express your creativity? It also is associated with the arts, your children, and casual or unmarried sex. Mastering this house requires that you participate and or learn to appreciate the arts like music, dance, painting, sports, etc. It requires that you learn to have fun, party, or engage in unmarried sex in a safe and respectful way. And lastly, if you have children, you must learn to love and raise them to be responsible and productive adults. The sixth house primarily deals with your work life, type of work you do, and your job skills. To master this house, a person must develop some type of job skill or trade in order to be a productive member of society. These are the 6 personal houses of the horoscope, and as you can see, they are personal in nature. They are below the horizon in the dark, symbolizing that only you know your true weaknesses and strengths in these departments of life, and only you know what it will take to improve them. Next up are the 7 social houses. These houses are above the horizon in daylight, symbolizing that they pertain to departments of life involving other people, organizations, and groups. The 7th house is the first of these social houses. It governs partnerships, marriage partner or significant other, legal matters, and open enemies. To master this house, you must choose your partner or partners carefully and treat them with respect and understanding. This house is opposite the first house and is the first house to introduce polarity between the houses of the horoscope. In this case, polarity means the conflict of maintaining a strong first house identity while at the same time embracing the strengths of a partner or partners in the 7th house. The next 5 social houses have polarity with their personal house counterparts as well, and I will be covering them as I discuss each one. The 8th house is the house of death, transformation, marriage life, serious sex, and finances of marriage partner. To master this house, both you and your marriage partner must be willing to sacrifice your own individualities in order to create a strong, meaningful, and lasting union or single identity. In addition, marriage life must be based on the mutual understanding of the shared needs of one another. The polarity between the 8th house and the 2nd house is the struggle to keep what's yours separate from what's theirs. The 9th house governs higher education, long journeys, religion, or spiritual life, and philosophy. This house can be mastered through the attainment of higher education like college, graduate school, trade schools, etc. In addition, you must explore and get to know other places in the world outside your local community. Become worldly in life, so to speak. You also must embrace the notion that there is a higher power other than yourself and fellow human beings. The polarity between the 9th house affairs and 3rd house affairs lies in the struggle between the philosophical versus the practical side of life. Both can be achieved over time. The 10th house deals with your career, social standing in society, and activities outside your home. Mastering this house requires that you find a career passion in life and maintain your dignity at all times. The polarity with the 10th house versus the 4th house lies in the balancing of career versus home life. The 11th house governs friendships, organizations, groups, and political affiliates. To master this house, one must learn to be diplomatic in group activities and be a team player. One must learn how to socialize and maintain good, lasting friendships. The polarity between the 11th house and 5th house is the battle between satisfying the needs of others without neglecting the needs of yourself. The 12th house is the last house and is the house of transcendence. It's also called the house of sorrows. It governs end-of-life affairs and things hidden away, such as nursing homes, hospice care, prisons, occult sciences, and secret enemies. To master this house, one must learn to have empathy for people and be sympathetic to people less fortunate than oneself. The polarity between the 12th house and the 6th house is the call to be of service to people less fortunate, versus the need to spend more time at work. This ends my discussion about houses of the horoscope. What I shared with you about each house is only the major themes of each house. There are books written about these houses that go into more depth, and I encourage you to seek them out to broaden your knowledge. Lastly, I want to point out that houses of the horoscope are static. They don't move around. Planets and zodiac signs, as you will see, move in and out of them. But house positions don't change. To recap house meanings, there are two major points to remember. One, they represent departments of life which must be understood and mastered in order for a person to reach his or her full potential in life. Two, there are personal houses and there are social houses, and there's polarity between them. Now that we've added the 12 houses to our horoscope and discussed them in detail, I will now add the 12 zodiac signs and planets to the chart, beginning with zodiac signs. In Chapter 3, I said that zodiac signs reside in the outer circle of a horoscope. As you can see, I've placed the symbols of the zodiac signs inside that outer circle. In a perfect horoscope, the zodiac sign Aries will appear on the eastern horizon at 1 degree 0 minutes, covering the first house. This sign is then followed by Taurus on the cusp, or covering the second house, then Gemini over the third house, and so on and so forth until you get to Pisces, which covers the 12th house. I want to point out that each sign is fixed at 30 degrees in length. Therefore, the 12 signs, starting with Aries and ending with Pisces, will make up a 360-degree circle around the Earth. This perfect chart I'm showing you is a static chart, meaning that it's frozen in time. In nature, however, zodiac signs rise and fall from east to west every day, with a new one appearing on the eastern horizon every 2 hours. Therefore, over a 24-hour period, each sign will have appeared on the eastern horizon. I know this is a lot to take in, but I believe it's necessary for you to know how zodiac signs move around the Earth. Now I'll talk about a static chart, seeing how I brought it up. A chart becomes static or frozen in time when a baby takes its first breath and begins to live. When this happens, the musical chairs of signs rising and falling, so to speak, stops, and the energy of the zodiac signs and the positions of the planets get sealed inside the baby for life. The chart you're looking at is an example of a person who is astrologically perfect in every way. The real-life charts you'll be analyzing in the future will be quite different. Also, when a chart becomes static, the zodiac sign on the cusp or covering a particular house will begin to add its own unique influence or color to that house. I will be covering the meanings of each sign in the next lesson, and then you will know the type of color or influence each sign adds. Now let's add the planets to this perfect horoscope. First of all, there are 10 planets in our solar system. Remember, the sun and the moon are considered planets in astrology. They do not move in our solar system as fast and as consistently like the zodiac signs. Some move faster than others. For example, it takes the sun 1 year to orbit the Earth, but it takes the moon only approximately 28 days or about a month to do the same. Therefore, if you look to the sky, some planets like Saturn, which has a 29-year orbit, and Uranus, which has an 84-year orbit, will appear to remain stationary for long periods of time, while the sun and the moon continually move. Also, I want to make a special point of mentioning that all planets, with the exception of the sun and the moon, can at times appear to move backwards in orbit. This action is called retrograde. The planets in actuality do not move backwards at all. These planets just slow down at times, which to the naked eye makes them appear to go backwards. Like being on a train with a horse running alongside it. The horse appears to be going backward, because the train is going faster. I point this out for a reason. That is, in horoscope analysis, a retrograde planet's influence on nature is not as strong as it is when it is moving direct or forward. Please remember this point. As you look at my perfect chart, you see that I have placed a planet in each house except for one house where there are two. When I cover planetary meanings in an upcoming lesson, you will see why. But for now, just know that they reside in the inner circle and move in the chart from east to west around the Earth. With this placement of the planets and zodiac signs in my perfect horoscope, you now know what a standard horoscope or chart looks like in its entirety. And with the help of the tools I introduced you to and the decisions you had to make in Chapter 3, you should now be able to construct and/or cast an accurate horoscope. In this lesson, I will talk about the zodiac signs and their meanings. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and in nature it covers the beginning of spring. Its glyph or symbol is that of the ram, meaning repeated force. It is a cardinal fire sign. It rules the head, and its role in society is to be a warrior and/or create action. The second sign is Taurus. In nature, it covers the middle of spring. Its symbol is the bull, meaning stubborn and root-bound. It is a fixed earth sign, meaning it doesn't change easily. It rules the throat, and its role in society is to be a builder and/or make things happen. The third sign is Gemini. In nature, it covers the end of spring. Its symbol is that of the twins, meaning communications and ability to multitask. It is a mutable or changeable air sign. It rules the shoulders, nervous system, and its role in society is to create good communications and ensure people know. The fourth sign is Cancer. In nature, it covers the beginning of summer. Its symbol is the crab, meaning to mother or nurture. It is a cardinal water sign, rules the stomach, and its roles in society are to ensure health and well-being. The fifth sign is Leo. In nature, it covers the middle of summer. Its symbol is that of a lion, meaning pride and dominance. It is a fixed fire sign. It rules the heart, and its roles in society are to lead and govern. The sixth sign is Virgo. In nature, it covers the end of summer. Its symbol is that of a virgin, meaning striving for perfection and being critical of all matters. It is a mutable or changeable earth sign, rules the solar plexus, and its role in society is to make sure things are done right. The seventh sign is Libra. In nature, it covers the beginning of fall. Its symbol is that of the scales, meaning everything must be in balance. It is a cardinal air sign, rules the lower back, ovaries, and its role in society is that of the diplomat or peacemaker. The eighth sign is Scorpio. In nature, it rules or governs the middle of fall. Its symbol is the scorpion, meaning transformer. It is a fixed water sign. It rules the sex organs, and its role in life is to investigate and uncover the truth no matter how painful it might be. The ninth sign is Sagittarius. In nature, it governs the end of fall. Its symbol is the centaur, meaning freedom to roam and don't fence me in. It is a mutable fire sign, rules the hips, and its role in society is to explore new territories and ideas. The 10th sign is Capricorn. In nature, it governs the beginning of winter. Its symbol is that of a goat, meaning sure-footedness and being methodical in nature. It is a cardinal earth sign, rules the knees, and its role in society is to ensure things are completed in a methodical and structured way. That is, make it real. The 11th sign is Aquarius. In nature, it governs the middle of winter. Its symbol is that of the water bearer, meaning to cleanse the old and make way for the new. It is a fixed air sign, rules the ankles, and its role in society are to break from structure and establish new ways of doing things. The 12th sign, and last, is Pisces. In nature, it governs the end of winter. Its symbol is two swimming fish, meaning to be of service. It is a mutable water sign, rules the feet, and its roles in society are to be sensitive to the needs of others and be of service to the less fortunate. Now that I've covered the meanings of each sign, I want to say that the meanings I've given you are just the tip of the iceberg. All of them have a lot more meaning than what I've just covered. I encourage you to read more about them in the reference material I will be providing you at the end of this tutorial. In your quest to understand the meanings of symbols presented here, think of it this way. The United States has its Stars and Stripes flag as its symbol. If you were to ask anyone from the U.S. to talk about the meaning of this symbol, they probably would talk about it all day. Your goal is to do the same with each zodiac sign and planetary symbol. Before I leave this lesson, I want to point out that because these signs move through the houses continuously each day, they can land on any house at any given time when a baby takes its first breath. Therefore, you will need to know the meaning of each zodiac sign through all the houses. In addition, the same has to be said for all planetary meanings that I will cover in the next lesson. I know this sounds like a daunting task, but it doesn't have to be. For example, if Aries lands on the second house of finance, then the person whose chart you're reading is independent or a warrior type with his or her finances. If Taurus lands there, then the person is stubborn or conservative with their finances. It is my hope that you will grasp this concept. Now let's talk about the planets. In the last lesson, I talked about the zodiac sign meanings and how they move through the horoscope. I also gave you an example of how to apply their color or distinctive influence throughout the houses. The same concept applies here. Planets rise and fall from east to west just like the signs of the zodiac do. However, because of their varied speeds, they rise and fall more slowly. The sun, for example, can stay in a zodiac sign and house for 1 month at a time, while planet Saturn stays in a sign for approximately 2.5 years. That's taking its 29-year orbit and divided it by 12. You can see from this example that planets can play a more profound role in the affairs of a house more so than the zodiac signs do. Like signs that add their unique color and/or distinctive influence to a house, planets add their own brand of influence. That is energy or action. Let's take a look at the planetary meanings and then see how they fit into horoscope analysis. The sun is the most powerful planet in our solar system. It controls our consciousness or 5 senses. It rules the sign Leo, and if it is in the sign Leo at the time of birth, it is in its most powerful position. It is also said to have dignity in that sign. The house that it occupies at birth is where you consciously are more aware. The moon is the second most powerful planet, and it governs your feelings or subconscious mind. It rules Cancer, and it has dignity in that sign. The house that it occupies at birth is where your feelings strongly lie and where you subconsciously want to be. Planet Mercury rules 2 signs, Gemini and Virgo, and has dignity in both signs. It is not as powerful as the sun and the moon, but like the other planets, it plays a major role in how we behave. It governs all communications like writing, reading, talking, traveling, etc., etc. The house that it occupies is where you have strong communication skills. Like Mercury, Venus also rules and has dignity in two signs, and they are Taurus and Libra. It governs attraction like a flower attracts a bee, and is considered to be beneficial to whatever house it occupies. However, the house it occupies at birth is where people will find you most attractive. Planet Mars rules the sign Aries and is co-ruler of Scorpio with Pluto. It is most powerful and dignified in those two signs, and it governs aggressiveness and or how you go after things you want. The house that it occupies is where your aggression strongly lies. Planet Jupiter rules the sign Sagittarius and has dignity in this sign. It is called the Great Benefic and expands in a positive way the affairs of the house it occupies. Planet Saturn rules Capricorn and is dignified in that sign. It rules responsibility, structure in one's life, restrictions, and delay. Some astrologers call it the Great Malefic or Satan. The house that it occupies is where your greatest responsibilities lie and where restrictions and delays will be most evident. These planets that I've just discussed are called inner planets. They're called this because they date back to the study of astrology in ancient times. Until telescopes were invented, these 7 planets were the only ones astrologers knew. The next 3 planets that I'm going to discuss are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They are called outer planets. They're called this because they were discovered more recently and are part of modern-day astrology. Some astrologers call Uranus the higher octave of Mercury. This means that if Mercury governs basic communications, then Uranus governs higher communications like intuition. Also, if Venus governs love on a practical level, then Neptune, its higher octave, governs unbounded love on a higher level. If Mars governs basic aggression in people, then Pluto, its higher octave, governs power. Both these ways of expressing the difference between the two groups of planets are acceptable. Now let's talk about Uranus. Uranus rules the sign Aquarius. It is considered dignified in this sign. It adds a quickening effect, sudden events, and intuition to the affairs of the house it occupies. Planet Neptune rules Pisces, and when found in this sign, it has dignity. It adds a passive, artistic, imaginative nature to the house where it is found. The last planet is Pluto. Along with Mars, it is the co-ruler of Scorpio, and when found in this sign, it is dignified. It adds transformative power to the affairs of the house it occupies. Over the course of this lesson, you've heard me talk about planets having dignity or maximum power in the signs they rule. This is true. However, they are also weak or have lesser power in other signs. The reference material that I will be providing you at the conclusion of this tutorial speaks to this subject. Take time to study planetary strengths and weaknesses by house and sign. It is important in horoscope analysis. Before I conclude this lesson on planetary meanings, I have to talk about one more important factor that isn't a planet, but is just as important as the sun and the moon. This factor is called the rising sign or ascendant, and it's a zodiac sign. I mentioned it in the last lesson, but I feel compelled to mention it here as well. A person's rising sign governs the first house of physical body and is the entry point into the earth plane. An astrologer can tell a lot about a person's physical body and how they present themselves to the world just by knowing their rising sign. That's how important it is. The takeaway here is that if an astrologer knows a person's rising sign, their sun sign, and their moon sign, this is called the primal triplicity, a seasoned astrologer will know what a person will look like, how they consciously see the world, and how they subconsciously feel the world even before they meet. That's the power of astrology. This concludes my lesson on planetary meanings. Next, I'll discuss planetary relationships via aspects. As in real life, where there are good and bad relationships between people, the same thing holds true for all the planets in our solar system. For example, if you're walking down the street and you see someone you don't like directly across the street from you, there is a natural tension that develops between the two of you. Planets behave in the same way. This tension, either favorable or unfavorable, in astrology is called an aspect, and I define it as an angular energy field that occurs between two or more planets, either negative or positive. On this slide, I've listed the most common major aspects used in astrology. I've also listed their symbols for you to memorize. First up is a conjunction. It typically is a favorable aspect and occurs when two or more planets are within 0 to 10 degrees apart from each other. Think of this aspect as two or more people sitting either next to each other or a few feet away from each other. Second is the opposition. This aspect is unfavorable and occurs when two or more planets are 180 degrees across from each other. The third aspect is the sextile and is favorable. It happens when planets are within 60 degrees of each other. The fourth aspect is the square and is unfavorable. It occurs when planets form a 90-degree right angle to each other. The fifth aspect is called a trine. It is a favorable aspect, and it happens when planets are separated by 120 degrees. These 5 aspects make up the most common planetary relationships that astrologers employ in their horoscope analysis and reading. They are important to know because they influence the affairs of the houses with which they are involved. I must point out here that sometimes a favorable aspect, like the conjunction, can become unfavorable based on the planets involved. For example, if Venus forms a conjunction with Saturn, then restrictions and delays in matters of love or attraction might occur. Whereas if Venus forms a conjunction with Jupiter, then an abundance of love interests might be revealed. Bottom line is, you have to take the meanings of the planets and combine them with the basic nature of the aspect in order to determine the effect it will have on the houses involved. The last item I'd like to cover before leaving this lesson is concerning aspects that are not common, but play a huge role in horoscope analysis. These aspects are the T-square, the grand square, the grand trine, and the stellium. If any of these aspects are present in a horoscope, they will modify your analysis significantly. Now let's talk about them. The grand square occurs when you have 4 planets that are equally 90 degrees apart, forming a full square in a horoscope. You can see this in the chart by drawing lines between each planet involved. This is a highly unfortunate aspect. It means the affairs of 4 houses are involved. And when something goes wrong in one house, then things often go wrong in the other 3 houses at the same time. Next is the T-square. This aspect involves 3 planets that are 90 degrees apart and form a partial square. This too is an unfavorable aspect and can be viewed as a 3-legged chair waiting to fall. The affairs of the houses involved in this aspect are unstable and can be disrupted at any time. Following the T-square, we have the grand trine. This is a highly favorable aspect. It involves three planets that are 120 degrees apart and form a large triangle in the chart. As in the case of the grand square, you can see this aspect in the chart by drawing lines between the planets involved. This aspect brings great fortune to the houses involved, and/or it lessens the negative issues that may be present. The last aspect is the stellium. It involves 5 or more planets congregating or closely positioned in one house. This means that the person with this configuration in their chart is extremely focused on the affairs of that house with little regard for the affairs of other houses. A one-track mind, so to speak. This concludes this lesson and Chapter 4. Next up is Chapter 5 on basic horoscope analysis. In Chapter 5, I will cover 3 topics. The first one will be horoscope analysis procedures. Every astrologer must have an action plan or good work procedures for tackling the analysis and reading of a horoscope. Horoscopes are just too complex to not have one. Second, I will give you a brief analysis and reading of my personal horoscope just to show you how it's done. Third, I will take you through the client horoscope layout sheet that I use for all my readings. I'd like to start this lesson on horoscope analysis procedures by stating up front that everything you want to know about a person is contained in their horoscope. If a person's birthday, time of birth, and place of birth information are correct, then the horoscope can be constructed and read with accuracy. If a horoscope is constructed correctly, but the analysis and reading are faulty, then the abilities of the astrologer have to be called into question. Therefore, if you want to be a good analyzer and reader of horoscopes, take the time to study the material that I presented in the previous 4 chapters and read other material outside of this tutorial as a supplement. The first big ticket item that I will discuss in this lesson is what's called the primal triplicity. It is the first thing you should analyze in a person's chart. It's composed of a person's rising sign, also called the ascendant, and the person's sun and moon sign. These 3 components make up the main structure of a person's physical and psychological profile. Because a person's rising sign covers the first house of physical body and personality, analyze it by sign and any planets contained in that house to get a complete picture of how the person presents theirself to the world. The sun governs a person's consciousness. Analyze it by sign, house placement, and any aspects it makes to other planets. The third component in the primal triplicity is the moon, which are a person's feelings and or subconscious. Analyze it by sign, house placement, and any aspects it makes to other planets. Once you've completed this analysis, you should have a sound understanding of the person whose chart you're reading. The next area you should investigate has to do with major uncommon aspects like the grand square, T-square, grand trine, and stellium. Check to see if there are any present in the person's chart. If so, then analyze it by planets, houses, and aspects involved. In addition to uncommon aspects, look to see if there are any significant planetary half-chart patterns, like all 10 planets clustered in the eastern, western, top half, or bottom half of the chart. This can tell you whether the person has strongly biased life issues to deal with. The last area that you should analyze is each house by sign, planets in the house, and aspects to the house ruling planet. This will take up the bulk of your time, but it's worth it, and it will give you a more complete understanding of the person whose chart you're reading. I liken it to adding flesh to a person's bone structure. Now that I've covered with you the main things to analyze in a horoscope, let me point out that there is a lot more that can be done. However, my intent here is to get you started in a practical and somewhat easy way. You can make horoscope analysis simple, or you can make it as complex as you want it to be. But always remember that the people you're doing the readings for want their information given to them in layman's terms. They generally don't care about the technical aspects of horoscope analysis and reading. All they want to know is either information about their self, other people, and have their questions answered. So keep your chart analysis and feedback to people as simple as possible. This is just a word to the wise. Now let's take a look at a real horoscope and analyze some of it. What you're looking at is my own personal horoscope. My chart information is in the top left corner, and as you can see, I was born on Information Day, or 411. And of course, that's just what you're getting from me. For this lesson, I used my trusty IO Edition software package from Time Cycle Research and Company to generate this chart. Now, before I talk about my primal triplicity, I want to point out 3 things about my chart that I haven't covered in previous chapters. The first thing is there are 4 symbols in my chart that I haven't talked about. They are the North Node in my 12th house, the South Node in my 6th house, part of Fortune in my 1st house, and a newly discovered outer planet called Chiron. These 4 symbols, with the exception of Chiron, indicate non-planetary points in our solar system that some astrologers use in their readings and some don't. For the novice, I suggest that you stick with the 10 planets I've discussed, and that should be enough for you to master for now. The second thing is you can see that I have the zodiac signs Cancer and Capricorn covering 2 houses each. Also, if you look closely, you will see that I have Aries and Taurus covering my 12th house, and Libra and Scorpio covering my 6th house. These things can happen in a chart using the tropical zodiac and Placidus house systems. Simply put, some houses can be bigger than others. In the case of my chart, my 12th and 6th houses are the largest, and my 2nd and 8th houses are the smallest. The others fall somewhere in between. When analyzing a chart like this, just remember that if there are 2 signs covering a house, read it by blending the signs. The third item I want to point out is the bold straight line connecting the midhaven with the nadir. It is not straight up and down. It leans to the right. This happens in my chart because my houses are not equal. This has no bearing on the reading. I just felt I should point this out. Now let's look at my primal triplicity. The first component of my primal triplicity to analyze is my ascendant and/or rising sign. In my case, I have Gemini rising with Venus and Uranus just under the horizon in my 1st house. With Gemini rising covering my 1st house of self, it adds communication and multitasking skills to my personality. Venus positioned in the 1st house in favorable trine aspect with Neptune in the 5th house adds creativity and imagination to the things I do. Lastly, Uranus in the 1st house in favorable sextile aspect with the Sun in the 11th house and Mars in the 4th house adds a high level of intuition to my personal skill set, both in groups and at home. Also, Uranus is in an unfavorable opposition aspect to Jupiter in the 7th house. This means that I am not fond of others providing me with input. The second component of my primal triplicity is my sun sign. It is in Aries, governing the 11th house of friends and organizations. Also in the 11th house is planet Mercury. My sun in Aries in favorable trine aspect with 4 planets makes me consciously a warrior and independent. Therefore, although I like my friends and the groups with which I belong, and I communicate well with them, I do tend to operate as a loner within organizations, and I don't call my friends as often as I should. The third component of my primal triplicity is my moon sign. It is in the 12th house of sorrows and occult affairs. My moon is in unfavorable square aspect with Pluto and Saturn in the 3rd house of siblings and early education, and also Mars in the 4th house of home and parents. This unfavorable aspect has plagued me all of my life. Even though I loved my brother and my mother dearly, I always felt blocked or restricted with regard to showing my love for them, and I always felt a strong sense of responsibility to help them. In terms of early education, I've always felt restricted, and I determined at an early age that structured education was not for me. Lastly, my moon in Taurus in the 12th house indicates that I have a strong connection with occult sciences, and I need to be of service to those less fortunate. This is just a quick analysis of my primal triplicity. I just wanted to show you how chart analysis should work. I will not analyze any of the other houses in this tutorial because it will take too long. I will tell you, however, that if you apply the same principles to the rest of the horoscope as I did with the primal triplicity, then you will have successfully analyzed my chart and will be able to analyze any other chart you choose to explore. This concludes this lesson, and now I'll show you the type of horoscope layout I use for giving readings to clients. This slide shows the type of horoscope layout along with relevant information that I use when I read for clients. As you can see, the horoscope itself is in the upper right-hand quadrant of the paper. Below it is a rectangular grid containing a table of aspects of all the planets and a table of parallels. The aspects are above the diagonal line while the parallels are below. I use the aspect table all the time, but I do not use the table of parallels. In fact, I used this aspect table in the last lesson to explain the strengths and weaknesses of my primal triplicity. The other rectangles on this paper contain overall chart information, like how many planets are in fire, earth, water, and air signs. I want to point out here that I have no planets in water signs. This is quite telling because it indicates that I am prone to having a lack of sensitivity, which is true. Also, there are legends in this layout that relate planets and zodiac signs to their symbols, aspect names to their symbols, just in case I forget something. And lastly, at the top left corner are client name and birth information. There you have it, the chart layout and information I use for all my readings. This concludes Chapter 5 on basic horoscope analysis. This concludes my elementary astrology tutorial. I've enjoyed putting this tutorial together, and I hope it will be of benefit to you. As I said in other chapters, astrology is a lifelong endeavor, and the more you learn about it, the better off you will be. There are many forms of astrology, and in this tutorial, I only covered one, which is natal or birth astrology. Once you've mastered this one, then you should explore the others, like transits and progressions, horary, synastry, event, and many more. Now, in an effort to help you on your way to becoming a great astrologer, I've listed some of my favorite books on the subject, and if you read them, you will certainly become more knowledgeable in this exciting science. The books I recommend are as follows: A to Z Horoscope Maker and Delineator by Llewellyn George, Sun Signs by Linda Goodman, Complete Astrology by Alan Oken, Horoscope Symbols and Planets in Transit by Robert Hand, The Inner Sky by Stephen Forrest, and The 12 Houses by Howard Sess Portas. As I said in the beginning of this tutorial, I've practiced astrology for over 40 years. I can't say that it's helped me prevent negative things from happening to me, but I can with certainty say that it's helped me to understand why they happen. Knowing astrology has, however, helped me to become a better person, and it's helped me to better understand the people around me, and that's a blessing. I'd like to close by saying there is definitely a structure to this world we live in, and if you learn astrology, it will help you navigate through it. You'll also come to realize that the spirit or energy inside your body is the real you, and that although your body will someday pass away, the real you will not. I leave you with my final words, which are, as above, so below.